Hello, everybody. First of all, well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm very happy that we have people from so many countries in different time zones. First of all, I want to introduce myself. My name is Jimena Sanchez, and I am the Amfori Network representative for Latin America. I want to thank you all for being here and joining this webinar. As you all know, the wine sector is an important activity not only for our members but also for Amfori. We are close to wine producers and to the key stakeholders of the sector as well. I want to thank Patricio Parra from Wines of Chile for his time to help me to have a better and full understanding of the impact of COVID-19 in the sector in Chile. I also want to thank Luis Romito from Bodegas de Argentina for his time by providing me with valuable information to build this overview. As you all know, COVID-19 has changed the world, affecting not only people's health, but also our economy and the way of manufacturing too. As an Amfori member, for you guys, has always been important to know what is behind every bottle you source for your consumers. We all know that behind every bottle of wine or every bulk tank of wine, there are human rights, working conditions, and impacts on the environment too. The aim of this webinar is to provide you with a general overview of the impact of COVID-19 in the wine sector in Argentina and Chile. This means information about the impact on the population, the domestic market, the international market, and mainly on the impacts of COVID-19 in the wine sector, particularly how wine producers have been affected and how they have changed and are still changing their operations to protect their workers and to keep the business going, especially considering that the harvest had just begun in both countries when the first cases of COVID-19 were detected. Besides the general overview of the impact of COVID-19 in the sector, which will give you a general knowledge of what is going on in the wine sector, to go deeper on the topic with more specific information at the operational level, and also to hear about a particular experience, today we have a special guest. We have the team from Bodega Esmeralda that belongs to Catena Zapata family, represented by Ernesto Bagda and Laura Gonzalez. After Bodega Esmeralda experience, we will have a Q&A session. So let's start then with the presentation. You will be able to write your questions in the chat, in the box for questions that you have in the webinar little square. Okay, so what will we discuss? Oh. We will go over some key figures of Argentina and Chile so you have a better and full understanding of what is going on here, what the quarantine has been like in both countries, the harvest, just like I mentioned before, it happened to be that the two issues began pretty much at the same moment, the impact on wine tourism, which is also a very important element of the wine business in both countries, the impact on domestic market, the international market, and some other aspects that are already going on in Argentina and Chile. So just to give you a few key figures, the population of Argentina is 44.5 million. The first case was detected in March the 3rd in Buenos Aires region. There is a big connection between Argentina and Italy. So according to the scientists here, the type of COVID-19 that we are having belongs to the Italian type of COVID-19. Just some extra information. Up to yesterday, we have 34,000 cases. The main area that is being affected is Buenos Aires and its metropolitan area with 32,000 cases. So you can see more of the 95% of the cases are located in the same area here in Argentina. Well, just to have some extra information about wine regions, we have 4 wine regions. Region Norte, Cuyo, which produces 83% of the total, and that's mainly located in Mendoza. Then we have the newly developed Atlantica region and also Patagonia. When it comes to Chile, just a few figures, you can see that the population is 18.7 million, so it's less than half of the population compared to Argentina. Here we have just the first coincidence. They also have their first case detected on March the 3rd. Up to yesterday, unfortunately, they have 184,000 cases, as the same as in Argentina. The main area affected is the capital city and the metropolitan area, and they have altogether in Santiago and the metropolitan area 148,000 cases. So that's pretty bad. And unfortunately, right now, Chile is, after Brazil, the second country with the most cases of COVID-19 in Latin America. Just some background information about Chilean regions. They have 6 regions: Atacama in the north, then Coquimbo, Aconcagua, and then they have the equivalent region to Cuyo, which is called Central Valley, and then these only regions produces 83% of the total. So both wine regions, Cuyo and Central Valley in Chile, they are located pretty much at the same latitude. Then we have the South region and Austral wine region as well. Well, first we will go with some information so you can understand what the quarantine was being like in Argentina and Chile. In Argentina, in national level, quarantine was declared by the president in March the 21st. The wine sector, as it is, the wine is considered food in Argentina, so all the food sectors or industries are considered an essential activity, so it was considered the wine. The activities right now are being reopened according to the number of cases, and the quarantine is still more strict in Buenos Aires than in other provinces due to the high number of cases that they got. In Mendoza now, more activities are being reopened since the last 2 weeks, since we have around 100 and a few more cases. In Chile, things were quite different. At the beginning, they only declared a partial quarantine since March in only a few neighborhoods in Santiago. After things unfortunately started getting worse, a full quarantine for Santiago and its metropolitan area has been declared since the 15th of May. Military forces are also are in the street helping to control the isolation. Just like in Argentina, the wine sector was also considered an essential activity, and that's why since the very beginning it was allowed to go on and to keep with all the activities. Well, the harvest. As I mentioned before, the harvest, the COVID-19 hit the southern cone at the very same moment that the harvest was beginning. It is important to mention that the harvest in both countries, and maybe then Ernesto can provide us with some more technical information about it. But then this year, due to the high temperatures that we had this summer, and also due to the lack of water we are going through in both countries, we are going through a very bad water scarcity. The harvest began in an earlier time that it should have begun, and at the same time, it was the shortest. It was a shorter harvest compared to previous years. So in a way, there was an advantage, let's say, given by nature, that was better to have a shorter harvest. A protocol was defined by the government that would include not only the grape picking, but also the transportation, the reception, and all the process that go on during the harvest. A use of circulation permits was implemented for workers, for wineries. Home office when possible, of course, that not everyone at the winery can do it, but when it's possible, all the wineries are doing that. Hand washing and sanitizing procedures were put in place for all the workers to avoid the spread of COVID-19. Social distancing group up to 5 people. More shifts were implemented at the cafeteria to reduce the number of people and to increase the social distance. Truck drivers were not allowed to leave the trucks as much as possible when they would arrive to the wineries bringing the grapes. It was implemented the use of facial masks provided by the wineries and other PPE such gloves according to the type of work. A better coordination for arrival and departure of trucks at the winery was implemented. We have to mention here that in normal years, depending on the size of the winery, maybe you can find, I don't know, maybe 40 or 50 trucks doing a line to enter to the winery, and then there is a lot of people going around while they are waiting to enter to the winery to unload the grapes. Transportation to vineyards in vehicles to transport workers were, happen only using 50% of their capacity, and only one person at the harvesting machine was allowed. These are just some measures that were some recommendations that were asked to wineries to implement during the harvest to protect their workers. Then with Catenas Zapata team, we will have the experience to know specifically how these recommendations were implemented. Oh. Okay. Just to know, oh, sorry, it should have been, is my presentation, oops. Okay, the harvest in Chile. The use of circulation permits for workers was also implemented as the same as home office when it is possible. Only the necessary workers at the operations were allowed. Hand washing and sanitizing procedures were put in place. And also, this is a difference also with Argentina, a temporary adaptability agreement was set with the unions during the period of the harvest. Up to three people working together and 1 meter of distance, temperature control of drivers was implemented, and just like in Argentina, they were not allowed to leave the truck as possible. Reduced groups at the cafeteria were also implemented to increase the social distance. Immediate isolation of worker with symptoms, this was also implemented in Argentina. Arrival and leaving of workers at different times to avoid contact and to increase the social distance. I think this is a very good recommendations. And also employees that have traveled overseas were asked to remain at home or to do a 14-day quarantine before returning to the winery, just to avoid a possible contagious. Of course, that was at the very beginning, because as we all know, international flights have been canceled, but at the very beginning there was still people coming in to the country. When it comes to the wine tourism, as I mentioned before, this is also a very important element of the wine business. In Argentina, the wine tourism activity, unfortunately, is closed since the middle of March. There are 240 wineries that are open to visitors, and last year there was an estimation of 1.1 million of visitors during the during 2019. As you can see with these figures, we can tell that it's a very important activity, not only in a direct way for wineries, but also in an indirect way for the hotels and restaurants for Mendoza. Since May the 28th, 12 wineries have reopened their restaurants to local visitors, only people from Mendoza, and they can only use 50% of their capacity. Restaurants right now, I mean, restaurants from wineries are working with delivery services, but of course that is not enough to cover the income that they couldn't make during the time they were closed. It is also important to mention that the Wine National Commission, called COVIAR, and also Bodegas de Argentina, they are working on the development of protocols for the new normal. Just to see a few pictures of what wineries are doing right now, they are working on menus that they deliver, just a picture of what Trapiche is doing and what Susana Balbo also is doing, so people can enjoy their menus at home. The situation related to wine tourism in Chile is pretty similar. They've been closed since the middle of March. Last year, they received around 550 visitors, and they were expecting for 2020 642,000 visitors. Unfortunately, I mean, this year, of course, there will be less than that people. They are very active in development protocols for the reopening and the new normal. Enoturismo Chile is also providing support to the wineries. Wines of Argentina is running a very interesting initiative called Vino por Ellos to support waiters and waitresses, and mainly the wineries participating. What they are doing is that their e-commerce, there is a percentage that is between 10 and 25 that money will go to support the waiters and waitresses that used to serve their brands in restaurants. So I think it's a very interesting initiative that they're doing. About the domestic market, there was a drop of 30% of sales in the domestic market since March, when the isolation began. Consumption in restaurants and hotels had a big impact. Now, a few provinces have reopened the activities, but of course that is not as much. The e-commerce in Argentina is growing very, very slowly. I mean, in the case of Chile, there has been a drop of 2.9. In this case, you can see that it's not as bad as it is in Argentina. E-commerce has grown between 1% and 3%, and it's very interesting to say that direct online sales from wine producers had grown between 50 and 200%. This is something new that wine producers are developing because they used to reach the consumers through distributors or retailers, but now they're doing directly. We can see that certainly consumer preferences are changing. Related to the international market, during the first quarter of 2020, Argentina's wine export grew by 67.3 compared to 2019. Bulk wine grew by almost 180%. It is important to mention that unfortunately Argentina is going through a devaluation process of our currency, so that's the reason why we are selling more to the international market. On the other hand, Chile, during the first quarter of 2020, Chilean wine export dropped by 4% compared to the same period in 2019, and the bulk wine also dropped 29.9%, and we can see a big difference about what it was going on mainly in bulk wine between Argentina and Chile. The total volume for Chile is 200.1 million liters, and you can see that in Argentina it's slightly smaller with 115 million liters. The World Bank for Chile is expecting a reduction of the economy in 4.3. It is important to mention that Chilean economy is also being hit by their social crisis that started in October 18 last year. Just some other aspects to mention. In Argentina, there's been an increase of a national tax for wine that increased in 30%, and wineries and wine producers are refusing to pay this tax, and then there's a bit of a conflict going on right now related to that. And on the other hand, in Chile, unfortunately, the OIB World Congress that was going to take place in November 20, due to COVID reason, had to be canceled, and it was going to take place in Santiago. So that was pretty much the overview of how COVID-19 has impacted the wine sector in Argentina and Chile. Well, then if you have questions, we would love to answer. You have the question box to do them. And now, and for more information, of course, you can always contact me by phone or by email. You can see my contact details. So let me introduce you now to the team of Bodega Esmeralda that belongs to Catena Zapata. Of course, that COVID-19 hits the business in so many aspects, so there is no way that this challenge can be tackled for only one person. So Catena Zapata got together as a team, and this team is led by Laura Gonzalez, and now I will leave Ernesto Bagda, who will tell you about their experience and all they've been doing and they are still doing to solve the challenges that COVID-19 have brought to the business. So Ernesto, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you, Jimena. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone on the other side of the screen. Thanks, Amphory, for inviting us to share our experience with this pandemic and to share what we've learned so far. Bodegas Esmeralda is a family-owned winery. And it's on its fourth generation now working in the wine industry in Argentina. It's a family-owned since the very beginning. It's a family-owned company and still managed by the family. So it's a company that is very familiar with all the environment and the people working around the activity. Next one, Jimena, please.
Yes.
So Jimena, we can move forward because Jimena already showed, but just to comment that the Bodega Esmeralda has vineyards in all the different areas in Argentina. We are applying all these measures that I will explain you. They are being applied in all the different areas of the country where we have facilities. In terms of wineries and bottling facilities, they are all located in Mendoza, where Jimena told you that is the main wine country in Argentina. So in Agrelo, where we have the tourist area and the pyramid, the winery, we have one bottling line and one working shift. Vista Flores and Junín are one in the south of the city, the other on the east side of the city, about an hour from the city of Mendoza, so in quiet, isolated areas, and Most of the workers live around the facilities, so it's also an advantage. In those two is where we are producing more actively, so we have 2 working shifts on each of them. And in the other facilities, they are just to produce wine and to hold wine there and do blends and keep the wine aging. So we have very small teams throughout the year, except during the harvest. Next, Jimena, please.
Yes.
So a quick timeline that also Jimena explained. On March 3rd, we have the first COVID-19 case in Buenos Aires. Then we enter on March the 20th. We enter the national government dictated quarantine. Next, Jimena, please. The winemaking industry is considered food in Argentina, so we were in an exception. On March 16, Mendoza, the government of Mendoza decided to close the borders with other provinces and obviously with Chile, because we face on the west border, we limit with Chile. March 21st, we had the first positive COVID-19 patient in Mendoza. And the thing here is that in Mendoza, they were all identified as imported cases. No, we don't have a spread activity or contagion in Mendoza, because all the cases were isolated when they arrived to Mendoza. The first case was a self-quarantine woman who arrived from Italy, and she just isolated even from her family. So that was a great social responsibility act, and that's one of the reasons probably why we don't have that much spreading of the virus so far. And last week on June the 12th, alarms activated, which is important to keep the people aware that we had the first COVID case in a winemaking facility. It was a winery that is closer to the city of Mendoza, and it was related to a dispatch worker. So the fact is that with these cases, we understand that the biggest risk is related to the transportation activity, because truck drivers are still active here in Argentina, and they are going mainly to Buenos Aires, and those are probably the factor of spread of the virus. So in my opinion, this is that is one of the most important areas to control and to isolate if you want to take measures. Next, Jimena, please. So, like the first actions that we took was related to the team leaders of each activity, of each area, meeting with social distancing. At that time, nobody knew exactly which were the ways the virus spread, or which controls should be taken more specifically. So we decided to call our importers also to get information about the world situation, their situation, and share information and share what we were doing with them. We also ran immediately an analysis of critical supplies and products, just in case that the borders were going to be closed, and to make sure that we have enough supply of things, and especially focusing on the harvest, because like Jimena said, it took us in the middle of harvest time. At that time, the harvest was at 50%, which is another interesting thing, that this year's harvest was fortunately short and fast, because we had lower yields and warmer, drier years. So grapes ripen really fast. So on one side, the nature punished us with the virus, but on the other side, Mother Nature helped us with a faster harvest. And also we did an analysis of production and stock of finished goods in the winery, and made a plan to make a fast increase of those finished goods, just in case we will have in the future to decrease the activity on the facilities. Next, Jimena, please. We've been running, instead of running the internal audits with the quality control team in contact with the people, we are now just measures that we take to decrease the contact between people, but the internal audits are made just through analysis of records, and we are using apps like Microsoft Teams to have the audits being run inside the winery. No more people walking in different areas or in contact with different teams. And the same for traceability exercise. We did a test on how would it work without social contact, without personal contact, trying to achieve our 4-hour tolerance that we managed internally. On March the 12th, we closed the tourist activities. Most of the tourists for us from Brazil. So as the borders were closed, and also Mendoza was about to close the borders, the tourism is now closed, and the trips from our team, from our staff, obviously suspended. And both cases for workers that had traveled abroad or to Buenos Aires were requested to have the 14-day quarantine suggested, just to make sure that they were not infected. Next, Jimena, please. So on March the 12th, we started defining like the first draft of our COVID-19 action guide. And basically what all the world and on all the information that we have, prevention guidelines, and we started communicating to the people with banners posted all over the winery, transmitting them also via their managers or their team leaders, to be calm, but to be very informed. We offer them all the time that they needed in case they have doubts. But we set very strict protocols, and we publish them in the winery. And each member of the winery is getting a guide, yes, a set of things that to prevent COVID, not only inside the winery, but in the rest of their lives, so they're outside of the company life. We made a mapping of all the resources, and with that, we increased the amount of resources depending on the facilities according to the amount of people and the circulation. And we applied at that time the first survey to identify people on the high risk group, which is age or pre-existing conditions. Next, Jimena. The same in terms of transporting people to the winery. We both started. We increased the amount of cars or vans that transported people, just to make sure that they had 1 meter of 1.5 meters of difference between them. The suppliers were not allowed to enter the facilities. We made the suppliers to leave their supplies at the entrance of the facility. Now today we've changed. They are following the protocol, not in contact with the people from the warehouse or where they get. They don't get down from the truck. But at that point we decided not to let them enter, just as a preventive measure. All the staff that was considering high risk is now at home, working from home, and if they cannot work, we still pay them, because we want to protect them. Well, the action guide has been permanently evolving. I will show you a bit later. We are on revision number 5 of that. So we are constantly monitoring which are the new things appearing about the virus. As I told you, the personnel was trained by the managers, by the team leaders. The commercial and administrative staff is doing home office, mostly home office, and if they come to the offices, it's an extremely limited amount of people. I mean, if normally we used to have 10 people in the offices, today we have 2, basically one on each office, and the rest is doing home office because they obviously can. On the winery and production side, obviously is not possible, so we increase the space and the offices available for the team. Because of that, as we decrease other activities, we have more space available. And something important here for me is the implementation of a COVID-19 internal audit, which is once a week. We have a member of the quality team going around all the areas, obviously respecting all the sanitation and hygienic measures, and not getting in close contact with each of the people, but they are like monitoring and making a report and sending improvement opportunities to each of the team leaders and the managers. Next, Jimena, please. Well, March 17th, the same. We applied more measures for training, and specifically on cleaning and dining facility. We increased the amount of people cleaning the restrooms, the dining or the cafeteria, and that was doubled. The amount of the frequency of cleaning was doubled. Obviously, we put in all the areas sanitation material like gel, alcohol, and all the things related to sanitation. On March 18th, we created the task forces, which are divided between in wineries on one side, wineries and production, and on the other side the vineyards, because those are like quite different activities, and the amount of people involved is very different. Communication spokesperson have been defined in both teams, to the rest of the managers and to the rest of the team leaders. And the procedure The contingency procedure is established since then. Next, Jimena, please. PG16 is how the organization and how the task force act according to the COVID and all the activities and measures that we are going to take from now and every day. And then we have another document, which is basically the way we communicate all those decisions to the workers and to the staff of the winery. Winemaking task force includes quality control, operations in terms of bottlings, human resource, me on the winemaking side for specific wineries, and Leopoldo Kuzarov, other area, and the rest of the country. Next, Jimena. The same with vineyards. Quality and human resources involved, and the main managers for the vineyards to communicate to the rest of the team. Next. So something that we should never, on those resources that I mentioned, that we are now having a stock control, a permanent stock control, and that are critical for the activity of the winery and the bottling is this is the list. What everybody sees here, but the important thing is that we define a person, a team that is monitoring constantly the inventory of these things. They are, you know, that I showed you that we have many different facilities, but instead of having one person on each facility monitoring that, we have one group of people in one facility making sure that all the rest of the places have enough stock of that, and obviously the purchases and the logistics is easier when you manage on one single group. Next. Ultra low volume sprays have been a good measure that we take. At the beginning, in terms of disinfection tunnels, that we had like dozens of different offers from different companies, but we decided not to use them because there's a doubt if they cause some toxicity. And that's what I told you about the definition of supply needs. And also something important, chemical toilets in different areas of the wineries to isolate the outside people and have them using those toilets and avoiding the contact with our staff. Especially, like I mentioned before, the truck drivers are a critical point there because they are the most dynamic group of people around the country and in more contact with possible cases. Next. This is how we are controlling the temperature. Everyone entering the winery or the facilities goes under an exam, not only the temperature control, but they also have to fill out or respond a questionnaire related to possible symptoms. And if they have 3 of the possible symptoms, they are the 3 out of 4 possible symptoms, they are not allowed to enter the facilities. Next. And well, during harvest, we run a risk assessment on each of the process. As I told you, we had most of the harvest in when everything started, but basically what we did was to isolate the processes, and with all the different processes we formed like groups of people that will never be, or that were in charge of those processes, but never in contact between them. That's the main goal today, to avoid, and obviously cleaning the material that they are sharing, the procedures for vineyards and wineries as well during the harvest, because they were in touch with a lot of people. Transport carriers, as I mentioned you, we decreased the amount of trucks entering the winery each day. So instead of having more trucks during the week, we decided to work during the weekends, and that way we could spread the amount of trucks and loads getting into the winery. More of the same, training all the personnel in contact with transport carriers. The transport carriers were asked not to get down the truck unless it was an emergency. We set toilets on their waiting area. We supply them with water and disposable glasses and things, so they can have instead of not just low periods of waiting on the line, but also to avoid that they get down from the trucks once they were inside the winery. Next, Jimena. So the documents generated after all these things that we've been saying was based on the protocol of the government of Spain, and it's basically how to proceed in case of doubts and or on potential COVID cases, how to use a decision tree, and what to do in case of living with an infected person. These are the main lines or headlines of the document. Next, Jimena. As I told you, we have the EG27, which is the way we train or we communicate to the people what measures and what care should they take to avoid and to minimize the spread of the virus, related to general hygiene in the general procedures in offices, inside facilities. So especially focusing also in the traveling, if they share cars, if they do carpooling, for example, but all related to hygienic procedures. Next, Jimena.
Holy, it's a lot.
The same, all related on how we this document is quite long, but it's divided in the different sections, so each of the workers can go straight to their section, and if they have doubts, they will have clear explanation on how to manage their environment and how to clean their area specifically. Next, Jimena. the same. We give a very detailed explanation on how to clean and what measures to take on each of the different processes. Next. Well, the survey before the suppliers, or for the suppliers to enter the company, as I mentioned before, what will be the way to communicate to the personnel, to the carriers, to the transporter. We gave them clues on or tips on how to make face mask, and it's all included on this document that we are constantly renovating and making revisions, and that's very important also to have the people aware. In our opinion, the most important thing is to take actions to have the people not relaxing, and one way to do that is to make new revisions of the document and sending them the document so they know that new actions are being taken. Next, Jimena. PG16 is the one I told you that is internal on the managing team, is how we are going to reduce, or how to reduce the employee-to-employee transmission. This is the focus of this document. As I told you, active communication to the staff, how are going to, in case of identifying potential risk and sources of exposure, is how is the system going to act to that, or how is the organization going to act? Also, how important here is how to isolate suspected cases after the evaluation of the cases. Next. In that document is also it's set how we are going to manage with sick workers. It's for both COVID-19 suspicious cases, but also in case they have just a cold or a flu. It's how are they going to be treated if they present those symptoms when they arrive to the winery. Also, obviously, the urgent actions in case we confirm a worker with COVID-19, and that's basically how are we going to isolate all the people that was in contact with them. But the idea is to isolate teams, which in an extreme case will be also isolate the whole shift of that specific activity. That's why we are working with delayed shifts. That's not that when one shift stops working, the other one is entering the facility. We have now half an hour delay between one team leaving, or one shift leaving, and the second shift entering the winery. That's been really challenging, because as we have different activities like bottling and wineries and administration and the cleaning and the maintenance, for example, we had to set different time schedules for entering the winery and leaving the winery, and also apply that for the security guards, which is an external company, an external supplier. So it's been really challenging, but nowadays no shifts are in contact in any winery. Next. Also, as mentioned before, we evaluated like essential activities, and this is more or less a synthesis of what we've been talking about. Isolate shifts for each area and each process, social distancing during meals and meetings. We've set screens in the dining room table to avoid the contact between people. The tables have, like you've seen in other parts, probably screens so the people will not have direct contact. Social distancing between co-workers, and obviously no workers from different areas can be in contact inside the facilities. The procedures for entering the facilities, basically the survey and taking the temperature and delayed times for each of the areas. Screening for workers, increased personal space in working stations. Also, we are, and all of these measures, important in my opinion, is that we have constant control for both the team leaders and a kind of internal audit from quality control, and constantly sending reports if they see some deviations. Next, Jimena. In terms of general environment, we are increasing the ventilation levels. Obviously, at this time of the year is more difficult because it's winter time here, but we are increasing the amount of air conditioning and air filtering, just to make sure that we have a better ventilation. And parts of the bottling area, for example, is kept open during stop time. And obviously the personal protection elements and more cleaning, like I told you, we double the frequency of cleaning and sanitation. Next. Well, for vineyards, it's more or less the same. The good thing is that in vineyards we had, in general, less people in contact and less people interacting, and the area of work there is easier, so you can spread the people. And at this time of the year, with pruning, you can physically isolate very well the people. But in general, we have another document which includes more or less the same as I told you before, but it was applied to our own properties, our own vineyards, but also we gave them to third-party growers and labor suppliers, what we call cuadrillas, which is labor or workers that come for specific or temporary works in the vineyard, but includes the same measures taken before. Next. All related to the same, but here one of the most important thing was related also to staff transportation. We focus on the distance inside the vans or the buses. So we had basically to double the amount of buses, and we are also helping people to come on their own vehicles to work to the vineyards. Next. Okay, and that's all. Just to leave some questions if you want. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, thank you, Ernesto and Laura. I'm just impressed for all the work that you guys have been doing. Certainly behind the recommendations from the government, there is a huge lot of work, and not only work, but also resources that need to be assigned in order to protect the workers and to keep the business going, and also with the challenge that we have no time for planning. I mean, as the wine sector, just like all the other sectors that have no time for planning or for forecasting resources to be assigned either, in a very difficult context, on a very difficult economical context also. So I guess that it makes it even double worth it what you guys are doing to protect the workers and to keep the business going and to keep delivering one of the best wines of Argentina. So I really want to thank you for sharing all this valuable information with all the participants and with all the Amfori members also. So far there are no questions. We are a little out of time, but I totally, I mean, it was so interesting and informative, all you have shared. So I also want to thank all the participants also for these extra minutes. I really hope it was very useful for you. And well, you have my personal contacts, so if there is any question that eventually come up for Ernesto and Laura or for me, please let me know, and we will be happy to provide you with the answers. So thanks a lot, everybody, and have a really nice day or evening. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Jimena, let me add something. I obviously, to all the participants, if they want more specific information about our documents, obviously we are aware and we know that this is something affecting all of us. It's not under company secret. So if you need from us some information to be shared, you can do it via Jimena, and she will contact Laura, and we can help you. And obviously we can hear comments if you also can help us improving that. But the information is available. You can contact Jimena, and she will get in contact with Laura Gonzalez, our quality control team leader. So they will surely help you with that.
Well, thanks a lot then. Okay, so bye-bye, and to everyone, have a really nice day.
You too. Thank you very much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.